Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Shawn Murphy. My guest today is Chris DiPaola, president of a nonprofit radio station called 96.7 The Buzz in Rhode Island. And the umbrella name of the organization is what again?
That would be the Buzz Alternative Radio Foundation, Inc.
First of all, welcome to the show, Chris.
Thank you, Shawn.
I want to start out with a sort of a general basic definition of what nonprofit radio is. What is it, and how does it serve the community?
Well, originally started years ago by the FCC, the lower portion of the FM band was originally intended to be non-commercial, anything between 88.1 and 91.9. Well, in the late 1990s, it was actually under President Clinton's regime, they decided at the time, William Kennard was the chairperson of the Federal Communications Commission, and that was shortly after corporate conglomerates were allowed to take over as many radio stations as they wanted. So when Mr. Kennard was chairperson of the FCC, he said that we have to do something to bring back community radio, and there were several petitions for rulemaking before the commission. And he said, let's use some of these rules that were proposed by some people to bring back community radio. So the new term low power FM was created in the year 2000. And at that time, many people, nonprofit organizations only, were allowed to apply for these nonprofit FM frequencies. And that is the type of station that 96.7 The Buzz is, an LPFM.
Now, was there sort of a public outcry to have more community radio be in existence for him to actually say, you know what, we need more of this, so we're going to allocate, these frequencies, so to speak, for that? How did it kind of come about?
There were a couple of things. Yes, there was a public outcry, not only in petitions for rulemaking that went to the FCC, but also illegal broadcasters doing what is known as pirate radio, unlicensed broadcasting. And the FCC started to find more and more of these after corporate takeovers were allowed. And some of them, the commissioners got together at the time and they said, why are we having this influx of pirate radio, and why are we having this influx of petitions for rulemaking coming before the commission to bring back, low power radio, or I should say to bring back community radio, what radio was originally intended to do to serve the public's interest. So that's when the rule was set forth to allow for low power FM.
Now, why is pirate radio bad? Particularly, I ask that question if the pirate radio operator isn't really making money off of it. It's probably, in most cases, pirate radio is more of a hobby to the operator anyway, isn't it? Or
well, in some cases it is, in some cases it isn't. And it's like anything else. If you pay a lot of money for a liquor license to serve liquor, and
that's a good point. If someone's just selling it, without
right.
the license.
Joe Schmo opens up around the corner and he's selling liquor at half off, or maybe somebody opened up a cigarette place, which actually happened at one point, and not taxing the cigarettes and selling it at half price. What's that going to do to the regulated person? It's going to make them very upset. So that's why pirate radio can be a bad thing. It's all pirate radio. Are they bad people? No. I mean, I've been friends with some,
as have I.
And I'll even say that when I started my radio career, I experimented with it.
Many of us know, we know each other, and we're both in the radio business. As well as TV for me. I just for me, the umbrella of broadcasting, it's all broadcasting for me. But in terms of, you mentioned one other phrase that I want you to define a little bit too. You mentioned community radio. A nonprofit seems to go along with community, local, low power radio. What exactly is community radio?
Community radio is exactly what it says. It serves the public's interest. It serves the community.
But don't commercial radio stations serve the public? I know they are for profit, but don't they serve a purpose, the public's interest, in an entertainment sort of way?
Yes, and of course every owner, goes about it in a different way, and there's a lot of great radio stations out there. But the whole idea behind low power FM is because it's low power, they can serve specific communities.
Right.
The Buzz, 96.7 The Buzz, its city of license is Ashaway, Rhode Island. So even though we serve a wide area on the internet and also beyond Ashaway, it also can give a little more individual attention to the community and serve specifically, what the community is asking for on a non-commercial basis.
And when you're talking about community radio and non-profit radio, are there usually formatic differences between that and your typical for-profit radio station, bigger stations?
Well, there's no rules about the formatics, except that the FCC intends that nonprofit radio stations fall under the category of educational, where there's some part of the format is a little off the mainstream, where it becomes educational to the listener. In our case, we're alternative rock, not playing what most of the mainstream stations are playing. So that pretty much is what a nonprofit would be.
Did you go, when you did some research on this, did you look at the other stations in the market, whether they be, for-profit or nonprofit, and look for a gap or a hole or a need that could be filled when you determine what format you were going to have for this station?
Yes, as a matter of fact, this type of music was offered on radio stations in the 90s as almost a mainstream type of product, and a little bit into the 2000s. And then as the 2000s progressed, that type of radio was gone. And just doing my own little personal surveys out there in the southwestern Rhode Island and southeastern Connecticut areas, asking them, what do they desire in a radio station that's not available. And the format that wasn't available was alternative rock. Bands like Pearl Jam and Nirvana from the 1990s.
Yep, and all those were on
grunge rock.
All of that was on regular, radio during their time in the 90s. You're so right about that. So aside from an informal survey from people, you also have to look at the makeup of the community that you're serving, age, demographics, gender, all things like that, income. That also would probably go into your, they would all be factors in determining what would be an appropriate format, because, let's say you have an older listener base, you might not necessarily have younger demoed radio stations there. It just wouldn't make sense to do that, right?
Right, and also you look at what demographics are currently being served by the other radio stations, and you've got radio stations serving the female 25 to 54 demographic, and you've got radio stations serving, as you just mentioned, the senior citizen demographic. But then you look at it and you say, okay, this is a demographic that's being underserved. And when I look at alternative rock, I look at an 18-plus listening audience. I would say 18 to now, believe it or not, because of where we are in time, 18 to about 55. People who were listening to that type of music in the 1990s, not saying that I don't want to use the word old because I don't want to offend anybody, but let's face it.
More wise, right?
More wise, and let's face it, demographics are changing. They continuously shift, and looking at all of the demographics, here is an important demographic that was being underserved.
What's the difference between a typical nonprofit radio station like this that serves the community and a college station, which also is nonprofit, but basically, it's there for the students first and foremost? That's more of a learning tool, maybe?
Yeah, it could be a number of things. Let's not forget, the FCC's rule says it has to be educational and non-commercial, but that also gives the broadcaster an incredible amount of freedom, where we say, God bless America. It really is true. The rules as to specifically what you're using it for, that's pretty much up to the license holder, as long as you're not doing anything illegal. So yes, in many cases they are licensed to universities and in some cases high schools. Before low power FM, the regular non-commercial band that I was telling you about, 88.1 through 91.9, one high school comes to mind in Rhode Island, Coventry High School, because it's very rare in this area that you find a radio station actually licensed to a high school, but they're licensed to Coventry High School, and as you know, many of the universities throughout the area.
So what's a typical day for you like as an operator of a nonprofit station? I know that you also have a for-profit station too that's completely separate, so that obviously takes up a lot of your time, but overall, what's a typical day for you like?
Well, a typical day would be between that radio station that you referred to and 96.7 The Buzz. I'm up every morning at 5:30 a.m. and believe it or not, I do the morning show on both radio stations.
Is it simulcast?
It's not simulcast, okay. No. And the FCC is very specific about low power FMs that they must originate their own programming. So on the for-profit station, I'm doing news, and on the FM station, I'm playing alternative rock music. And through the magic of computers, not to say that we are, primarily automated, because we like to do a lot of live stuff as well, I'm able to go back and forth between both radio stations and kind of have a different persona on the Buzz than I do, on the other radio station. And then I go out and I see businesses all day, knock on doors, and for the 96.7 The Buzz. We refer to it as 96.7 The Buzz. We don't say The Point. That's our moniker. I go around and knock on doors all day and see people, business owners who are interested in supporting the station. And because we're not a commercial station, we're allowed to identify businesses. We can say who they are, what they do, what their phone number is, what their location is. We can't. There are 3 specific rules of nonprofits. No mention of price. That's a no-no. No calls to action. I can't say call. I can say their phone number is, and no comparative language.
How about their website? Is that the same thing as giving a phone number, basically? You're giving them advertisement by whether you give out their phone number or their website.
As long as I say the website without saying go to their website. There's no call to action. I can say their phone number, their location, what they do, who they are. Again, no mention of price. No calls to action, and no comparative language. Those 3 rules.
It must have gotten, you've gotten very good, I would imagine, at keeping those things in mind whenever you mention a local business in your community because of those rules that are in place, right?
That's true, and not only that, because now I'm involved with commercial radio as well. It was very difficult when I'm doing things with the commercial station to get out of that habit, because once I've got that mindset to do it the nonprofit way, I just kind of stick with that way with no matter what I do. In my head, I say, oh, I can't use a command, but I can say you can stop by, but I can't say stop by.
I would assume that being a local, low-power, community-based nonprofit, you certainly, anyone who operates an operation like that is wearing many hats. So, like you said, you are out on the road. You are hosting your own show in the morning. You do have to deal with your staff, and I would imagine the staff is pretty sparse too, just because this isn't a big, giant conglomerate company, that's running it, right? It is. We're looking at the company right here, right?
Right. Well, it's funny that you say that, though. I do, over time, have been able to obtain a lot of help, and it's definitely not. I can't take all of the credit myself. Lauren Kleinkoff is the program director. He's responsible for programming all of the music on the radio station. My significant other, Lena, also does a midday show on the radio station. My friend Steve Conti, he's pretty much, I like to say he's in charge of the engineering. I do some of it myself, but he also makes the station sound good, and is also the voice of our legal ID, which is the top of the hour thing that radio stations have to run.
Call letters.
That's right. Nikki O'Connor, otherwise known as Nikki C, on the air, one of the personalities on the radio, and Dak Guernsey and Bob Evon and Andrea Casal. There's just a whole list of people that are involved with that radio station. If I've forgotten anybody's name, I apologize. There's also a guy named J.J. McDade. He helps out as well as the operations manager.
Well, on that note, as we get ready to go into a break, why don't you give out the website for the station so people can go to it and learn more and then come back. What's the station website?
The station website is thebuzz967.com. You can also listen live no matter where you are.
So go to the website. We'll put up a graphic on the screen, too. Chris DiPaola, the president of 96.7 The Buzz. It's about nonprofit, local, community-based